Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is a Tuesday edition of the MSP Initiative Live. And live from Denver, Mr. Kenny P. How you doing today, Ken?
Good, man. How are you?
Oh, a little snow, but I'm looking forward to Florida next week.
Yes, yeah. I think it's going to be a little bit warmer. There's supposed to be a snowstorm here in Denver tomorrow. Talking about a foot of snow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, you picked a great time for Denver, huh?
Yes, I did. I mean, it's beautiful today. It was really nice out, but well, beautiful meaning 50, not 30, but
Right.
it's 8 back home. So
8 back home, man. That's crazy.
yeah.
So I'm going to get some housekeeping out of the way like we normally do. We got a lot of stuff coming up next week. So that's super exciting. So we'll go over that. We'll go over that now and get that out of the way. I call it the housekeeping items as usual. So if you haven't been watching, I don't know where you've been, but we've been talking about this now continuously, right? So we're going to remind you again, if you're not going to be in Florida next week, what are you doing? Clear your schedule, come down to Orlando and join us at Zero Trust World, right? So Threat Locker is hosting Zero Trust World, very security driven event. We, MSP Initiative, will be hosting a MSP community block party at Zero Trust World. So we want to see you there. So please clear your schedule, figure out how to get to Zero Trust World, or if you're in the greater Florida area, join us for the block party. Go to this page, mspinitiative.com on their block party. If you're going to the conference, you're already coming to the block party. If you're in the area and you just don't have enough time to come to the conference, you should find time. We actually have a cool, if for some reason you're in the area and nope, that's not what I wanted. We have a discount code, which we'll tell you about in a second. If you want to go to the conference, you can get into the conference for a bit cheaper, but we have a discount code. So definitely join us, but definitely come to the block party as well. Now, this session and every other session is recorded. You can get them in podcast or video format under the sessions tab of mspinitiative.com. And then lastly, we have all 8 one-week channel strong bus tours. That's right. We haven't stopped. We are bringing it back with full force. And here is our event schedule, okay? So we're practically coming to almost every corner of the continental United States, mostly, sometime throughout the year. We want to see you. So if you're in any one of these areas, we're going to give you the option to obviously join us if you're an MSP. I think, Ken, we're still looking for hosts in certain cities.
We sure are. Yeah.
So if you're an MSP, you're in one of these cities and you think you can host us in your parking lot, definitely reach out. We could maybe use your help. I think maybe we're working already on week 3 and beyond.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yep.
So check it out. Let us know if you can help. Let us know if you can come. And those are the highlighted items of the week so far. That discount code that I told you about, if you're interested in joining, like you go to the Threat Locker page and you go to do the actual registration, and it does cost money, right? They're giving away a lot of cool gear to all of the conference attendees. Google a rubber ducky and a bunch of other things, right? It's more than just a toy. All kind of cybersecurity kind of tools, which we think is pretty cool. So if you're in the area, you're interested in joining us, you can get into the conference at a discounted rate. I'm about to put that up on the screen just so that you have it. And then once we're done with this code, if it somehow expires, because we've hit our maximum on this code, we have another code, right? So for anyone that is interested in joining us that isn't already registered, this is our current discount code to go to the event if you're not already registered. And if for some reason that doesn't work, we've maxed out on that one, we have another one. So definitely jump in there and join us. All right. I'm done with all my promotional ads for the day.
It was a real top secret code.
Yeah, top secret code is 007 bonds. And Keith says, I just confirmed I'll be there checking in a bag for just cigars and booze. Sounds like another guy we know.
Yeah.
Sounds like another guy we know. And
I
I
don't
think
think
he
George
said,
would
and
be able to check booze and cigars.
he says, I owe Ken a dinner, but George is invited.
There you go.
And then Keith said, I may have to crash your dinner. I'm
No,
sorry.
Darren, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not going to be at Chick-fil-A. I can promise you that.
You never know.
Exactly. So, all right. Whew. Next week, man, I'm real looking forward to it. And I hear there's going to be for the people like Keith, who may not be bringing their own cigars because he is. I heard there's going to be a cigar lounge.
Nice.
At the block party. So I think I know where Keith's going to prop up.
Yeah, he'll probably take over in there.
Yep. He'll be managing the whole operation, I hear. So, Ken,
Sure.
I've brought it up. I feel like on every single MSP Initiative Live, Keith says cigars are made from leafy green plants, so it's like having a salad. Okay.
Smoking
Sure.
a salad, right.
So I brought this up every time. Time to bring it up again. You know what I'm going to say. NCE. I think a lot of people thought he left. He's gone. He's finished. No more. So I mean, a lot of people thought they had more time, and that a lot of people thought that they had, like, even if they didn't convert people to NCE, that they could ride it out until the end of their existing term with their customers. But it turns out that starting March 1, which is approximately 2 weeks from now,
Right.
that's not the case, Ken. Everyone's price is going up, whether you're on NCE or you're not.
Yep. Listen, there's not anything more I can say on here about it. I mean, all we've been doing is trying to prepare everybody for what's been happening and trying to help as best as PAX8 can, not being a PAX8 issue, but obviously a solution that we provide, right? So yeah, I mean, honestly, my thing is, for anybody that's still in a jam, reach out to your CAM and ask to speak to the Microsoft team directly. And they will be able to help as much as they can and get you aligned with how you need to do everything. The process, from what I understand, isn't horrible. But
even if they do nothing, Ken, their next bill from whoever they get 365 from, whether it's direct from Microsoft, whether it's through distribution, doesn't have to be PAX8, right? Wherever, right? That bill will reflect an increase.
Right.
Starting March 1st, which is in 2 weeks.
And the big thing here is you probably should have been preparing your customers for this from, George, what did you do? What did you do for your customers?
I basically sent, whoever the billing contact was, I sent a message just saying, hey, Microsoft's pricing is going up in March. Be aware that this is going to start as of the 1st on your bill. And then I said, hey, by the way, sometime in the middle of the year, June or July, you're going to have to make a decision on whether you want to continue monthly or if you're going to convert to what looks to be an annual, understanding that depending on that decision, your price could go up again, or you can maintain the now new price from March, but with the caveat, you can't reduce your licenses. I just spelled it out that way. And, again, I attached some links, right? Hey, this isn't me. This is Microsoft. I'm simply passing this down, right? Because this is what's big machine has asked for. And that's the story. So, I've had a couple of questions about it, and they basically come back and say, what do you mean we can't decrease? I'm like, well, right now, when you add or remove employees, the bill the next month reflects that quantity increase or decrease. Under a termed agreement, if you start with, let's say 20 users, I'm just picking a number out of the sky,
right,
then you can go up, you can go to 21, 22, 23, etc., but you cannot go down. You can't go to 19. And so people are like, well, why am I paying for something I'm not going to use? And I'm like, not my rules.
Right. So you're laying out the proper expectations.
Right. And I put a little caveat in there saying, hey, if something changes between now and then, we'll let you know. But as of right now, that's the story. That's the going situation.
Yeah, and that makes the most sense, right? If something does change, we're going to change with it, because this is not us as the MSPs, this is Microsoft, and we're following along Microsoft's guidelines.
Correct. So I mean, that's kind of sort of the messaging. And, like, I don't think anyone's really, the word annual, right? Like the whole, hey, if I agree to a 1 year, does that mean I have to pay for the year up front? That's the first question, by the way.
Right.
And the answer is, I think you can still continue paying monthly, even though you're under a 1 year, but I'll confirm, I'll double check that for you. So that's the first question. Then the second question is just confirming, well, if I agree to this 1 year, what do you mean I can't, like a clarification on not being able to reduce, right? So like, for example, Ken, they said, what happens if I start with 20 users, I increase to 22 because I hired 2 people. Can I go back down to 20? Because that's what I originally started with. I'm like, oh, that's a pretty good question. I believe the answer is no, but I'll double check that for you, right? And I just say, hey, I'll get back to you. So that
is a good question. Actually, that's a good question.
Yeah, like they're like, okay, I understand my base coming in, but I want to understand, like, I understand I can't go below my base, but can I get back to my base quantity? And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a good one. I'll ask. I was like, but the good part is, hey, we have in between now and June, July to figure that out. So, it was more about March 1st was the first kind of shoe dropping. So anyway, I'm just giving you a little bit of the experience that I've had.
Yeah.
Just reminding the people out there, if you haven't gotten this message, if you don't do anything, which I assume most people will not, when you get your bill on March 1st, it will be more. Just like that. There's nothing you can do about it. So Pete comes in and says, I don't think anyone's having an issue with the price increase, but more how licenses are tethered to the duration of the license. Pretty much.
Yeah, I agree, except for you'd be surprised at how many people are interested in the price increase as well as the other stuff. So there's still both sides of that. And then I think Keith's note is pretty good, right? That's, you got to approach it in a way that they'll understand, right? The not being the sales guru as you guys, I'm not either, Keith. I simply moved from the percentage increase, which sounds high, to showing them actual dollar differences, and it seems to reduce the drama.
This is the other thing, right? 20%, 30%, like all of that jazz sounds like a lot. But when you're talking, let's say, what's the smallest SKU? An E1 or an E3 is probably the SKU, but let's just call it business basic or standard, right? Whatever they call it now,
right.
$12.50. When you attach the increase, it's like $2, or you know what I mean? Like it's $2 and change, right? We're not talking about a lot of extra money, right? But like, so that, but hold on, Keith, in your case, you deal with a lot of larger organizations. So that dollar amount may be hundreds or thousands of dollars more per month if you have many employees, right? Hundreds of employees. So I guess it all depends, but in that organization, they probably look at that number and say, it's not that bad because they're used to big bills, right? Kind of thing.
Well, and they're also, as it's being passed through as Microsoft, they're going to say the same things. Well, we can't, it's not like we can go somewhere else. It's a Microsoft thing. It's not that Keith is raising his prices.
Correct. So at the end of the day, I think at the end of the day, everybody has to understand this is the situation. Be proactive as much as you can, and ultimately try and make sure that you get it, get the message to your customer so they understand it's not you, right? You didn't show up and say, raising prices. You're turning around and saying, hey, I'm literally just passing down what's coming down for everybody, right?
Right. Well, and then there's the people that have the Microsoft licensing lumped in with their overall managed services, and in some cases may be able to not even have to pass that on, or it may be making it worse on them, like we talked about before, where people are starting to think about splitting that out because of this. But the ones who have, I mean, I don't know, $200, $300 a seat have built in a whole bunch of extra cushion for the security, for all the things. This couple of extra dollars per month per seat may not be as bad for them.
Yeah, I agree. So Pete came back and said, we did an email out for our customers explaining it and followed the same path as Keith. Dollars, not percentages, seem to soften the blow. And then centered on the new restrictions, right? You know, like you have to ride the whole term, you know, you can't reduce, that kind of thing. And if they leave, they need to keep under an agreement till expiration and a management fee. Oh, that's interesting. So imagine you're an MSP. 365 is just part of the big picture, right? Let's say the customer decides to leave for another MSP. Happens. They're still going to be, they have to ride it with you until the end of the term, right? If they go under the 1 year term with you, they move to another MSP. They can't move that subscription across like they can now. They have to ride to the end of the 1 year, potentially, assuming you didn't agree to a 3 year, you have to get to the end of the 1 year in order to move, right? So what Pete's suggestion here is a management fee. You know, if I have to do as move changes on your behalf, because we're stuck together until the end of this, here's my management, almost like a vendor management fee, not a new concept. I know a lot of people never charge for it, but not a new concept. What do you think, Ken?
Yeah, I agree. I just think we're gonna, I don't know what to expect, to be honest with you, because there's so much going on with this. You know, and even though we're almost down to the wire, right? Where I still am seeing some weird movements with Microsoft, right? You're seeing people from Microsoft talking about this out in public.
Yep.
And it's like, whoa, that's not something that anybody's really seeing and saying, yeah, we're hearing you. We're hearing you. Well, what does that mean? What is going to, so
we're hearing you, but the dates are still the same.
So yeah, I just don't know what to expect from this. And a lot of it is, you know, just all of us kind of trying to look into that crystal ball and take a guess. But the most important thing is be prepared. Don't bury your head in the sand and hope it all goes okay.
The good news, Ken, is Keith came back and said, hey, this is a good time to like actually check. Do we need all of these, right? Like what's the lowest SKU people need in the organization, right? Like kind of like let's reevaluate who needs what, when, where, why, how, so that they understand if they lock into this minimum under the, you know, the annual term, you know, that they have right setted their actual costing, which is a good exercise. They should do that often, I think, if they could,
right?
Or if it hasn't been happening up to this point, this is a good time to do it. And then it says, I think this is Pete again. I think it'll evolve over the next 12 months. Microsoft may shift, just like they did when they introed O365, and it really wasn't partner friendly. That's the big guess, right? That's what we're all trying to figure out. But in the meantime, you can't just wait. Because if you just wait on March 1st, everybody's price is going up anyway. But if you just wait and then June or July hits, now you might be in a different position. Now, right. My understanding is after March 1st, the original comment that I made in the start of this was whatever the original renewal date, the anniversary date of that, you know, non-NCE path, right? The pre-NCE, like whatever you have now, that will be respected. But then once you hit that brick wall at the end of that, you're going to have to either convert or turn off. So you may not need to do it exactly in June or July, but it'll be staggered, right, to whenever people actually did their original account creation or whatever.
Right.
So all things to understand, you know, not trying to beat a dead horse. Sorry, that's a cliche. Nobody's hurting animals here. Just want to make sure people understand what's coming and that they start to talk about what comes back from your end customers when you deliver that message. The first one's going to be, can I go back to my original floor quantity or not?
Right.
That's good. And then the second one's going to be, do I have to pay for the whole year up front? I know that these two things are pretty much tied together. Keith comes back and says, I actually found the discussion with smaller clients, they began to understand how we are tied to some underlying contracts, quote unquote, tools, and how our market changes. So we had a better discussion about IT budgets and contingencies needed in the budget. Wow, that's a great conversation if you can get somebody to get to that point and
Right.
understand it. I mean, at the end of the day, if they weren't using an outside entity, they would be hiring somebody internally in a lot of cases. So just because they have an employee doesn't mean that they wouldn't have to have dealt with the same issue had they gone to the vendor directly and bought, right? Because that's what
Right.
happens, right?
And in this case, yeah, exactly right. And the other thing they lose by having that person is not having someone that goes direct, right? They can't get a lot of the tools that an MSP can beyond the Microsoft piece, right? So even beyond that, just having that IT guy doesn't get you all those things and get you out of paying these fees.
Yeah. And so like the IT guy's not going to put that on his credit card either, right? The company's going to have to pay for that security solution, that backup solution, that Office 365 style solution, that remote access tool, that like all they are paying directly for that rather than going through an intermediary, right? So like to Keith's point, this is the same for challenge that probably the end customers, even other things, right? Like the MSP is not selling them QuickBooks, right? Hopefully the MSP is not selling them, their line of business app, Salesforce, that kind of stuff. Those companies also increase their prices, right? So like this is something that they, to some degree, should be dealing with on a larger scale. I hate to go down and say, hey, well, somebody in the company must have Netflix and their price goes up all the time.
Right.
So that's a good analogy, but there it is, Ken. There's my checkbox for the day. I brought it up, but that was good additional information, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
How are you dealing with it? So there's that. Obviously the big story as we continue to go into 2022 here continues to be a combination of, hey, how are the roll up of MSPs, affecting you in your areas, right? I feel like it's just a circle, right? I'll touch on this part, because then there's a second part that I'll drop. Remember back in the day, Ken, when you started hearing people like Dell turn around and say, hey, we're going to start offering managed services in certain larger metros, right?
Yeah, Dell and Verizon, believe it or not.
And then they tried, and then they found out that if the organization was below a certain amount, they just weren't successful.
Right.
So every time people are like, yeah, people are getting bought and sold left and right and up and down in MSP land, but I'm not, you get a lot of people saying, well, I'm not really afraid of that because the service delivery level is so low at that point. They don't stick with it. Do you still believe that's true?
They don't stick with what? What is it that
the larger conglomerated entity and their service offering?
Sure. I mean, look, it's like everything else. There's different ways of doing things. What I've seen is the companies that get large and get bought up, gobbled up by PE, the internal folks, the really good people, and same as happens with vendors. When some PE companies get involved, it's all about the numbers. It's not about the relationship, and the internal people get grinded up by that, and it changes how they take care of the customer, and the customer feels that, just like with vendors. So in an MSP space, I've seen this where PE comes in and you start talking to the people that at these MSPs, and they're getting grinded up and they're looking to step away from it because they can't take that grind anymore. But there are other companies that get gobbled up and continue what that company was doing, what the MSP was doing all along, and let them do what, got them to that point. So, I wouldn't immediately panic when you hear your local MSP got bought up by, a larger MSP. Maybe obviously look into it and who bought them up and what's going to change and try to stay on top of that type of stuff. But, I hate to glob everybody into one certain problem, right? Like, not all PE is bad, not all MSPs big MSPs are bad, right? That buy these smaller MSPs. I think there's enough of it where you have to do your homework. You have to find out, if this is one of those companies that all they care about is the bottom line, and they're not really going to care about that customer service, that relationship that happens, then yeah, start looking to MSPs that do have that, care about that relationship still.
Sure. I mean, and listen, when an acquisition happens, a lot of the times things stay the same for a good long while, right? Until people are evaluated, teams are evaluated, product offerings evaluated, and then down the line, there's some sort of shift, right?
Yep.
We see the same with the software vendors, right? In the space, right? An acquisition occurs, a merger occurs, things stay the same for a year or two, and then finally a change occurs, right?
Right.
So at least for a period of time, things, unless, people don't disappear, things more or less stay the same.
Right.
Well, on the second realm, there is this concept of the same thing, but at the vendor level, right? Your end customer, unless it's a newsworthy event, right, doesn't necessarily care about the products or offerings that are behind you. They just expect, hey, you're doing your job, whatever it is that you're needing to do that as for what we're paying you for. We just expect that to happen. If you need to switch solutions underneath the hood to continue delivering your service, I'm not going to stop you, right? Like, keep moving along, and obviously that's a little bit, if it's not customer facing, it's easier to do, right? If you're switching EDR, MDR, antivirus, or malware protection, if it's invisible to them, they're not going to care, right? Now, if you're switching something that's customer facing, they may say, well, wait a minute, we use this every day. How does this going to change, right? But
which is why when you're doing that type of stuff and you're selling solutions, you should probably not be talking about what the actual vendors are and just talk about the actual solution, so that when you do have to make a switch like that, it's, hey, we're going to be doing an update this weekend, and you change it, unless it's something like you write in their hands that they see the name of all the time, or something like that.
It's like, hey, I'm going to move you from from Outlook to some tool I've never used before for email, right? Like,
that's
that could be that could be a little bit different, right? But if it's like, hey, I'm switching backup solutions, is my stuff going to be backed up? Yeah. Should I have any concerns about if we need to, fail over? No. Okay.
Right.
Anything else I need to know? Like, they're not really going to ask, I think, to pass a certain degree. So, that being said, I think some of the transparency, like, I'm wrapping this all back into one big picture. So we talked about Microsoft, talked about the stuff changing, what have you. And that comes into a transparency conversation, right? Hey, it's not me, it's them. This is a back-end vendor. Keith talked about, hey, let's talk about the bigger picture. There's a lot of vendors back here behind what we do. Things could change at any time. Like, we all talk about it, right? Vendors get bought, they get merged, whatever. Depending on who you ask on this call, you're going to get a different response depending on what letter name you put out there.
Right.
Like Garen, for example. But at the end of the day, the customer's like, okay, well, like, as long as it's not a risk to me, I rely on you to deliver your service. So the very few times that, and maybe it happened, and I'm sure it did, where somebody saw something in a news headline, right? Breach, security, whatever. And then all of a sudden they come asking you, hey, do you use these guys? Well, the answer is they probably should already know if you're being transparent. Right. But if they don't know, then you have that conversation then, right? So a lot of this goes down to the part that you can't replicate at scale, Ken, which is relationships.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's the big word that no matter what you do, no matter how big or small you are, the way that you build relationships with people or not is really at the crux of the conversation.
Right.
So let me ask you this question, Ken, and you've experienced this in your past. So, I think you'll have plenty of story to tell, which is, Well, as you continue to grow your respective organizations, you require more people to make it work. And people come and go, just like vendors come and go, just like customers come and go. But as you're trying to introduce more names and faces into your end users so that you can grow, how do you maintain a relationship as the original founder, owner, leader of that company, while you try and scale?
Well, if you're talking about the people coming in, the best thing is obviously having a process and procedure in place that everybody follows and understands so that they can just come right in and understand how it all works. And if you're building the right culture, the people who are already there are going to deliver the same message to them that you are. And that's comforting when you're walking into a new environment, right? Because if you're getting one answer from someone, or they, I go in and talk to them and I walk away and they go, don't listen to him, he's a blowhard, right? That's what happens in some organizations, that they don't know it. So the first thing is having your culture in the right place, with process, with procedure, making sure that everybody understands what the expectations are, how we do things here. And then anybody in the company could give that spiel. I mean, here, just look at PAX8, you get, we go from around 300 to, I don't even know where we're at now, 1,100 folks at PAX8, and anybody could pop into the company and ask the question, and they're going to get the same answer, and they still have the availability to talk to the CEO. You still make yourself available. I know John Street here at PAX8 sets up get to know the CEO type of lunches and stuff, where anybody in the company can sign up and do a lunch and have conversations. So for that to be open and real and have that availability, I think fits right into what they're hearing from everybody anyways, all the way down the line. Every employee is saying the same thing. Man, this company's great. The CEO is great. The VP of sales is great. Just going down the line, all these people are great because they're all rowing in the same direction. So you can scale. It's hard. You're still going to have growing pains, especially when you make a shift of the size that PAX8 did, right? 300 to 1,100. It's a good amount of growth. There's going to be spurts. Nobody's perfect. And I think that's where the approach should be, is that when you're talking to partners or prospects, don't go out there and say, hey, we're the best, we're this, we're perfect, because then you're clearly not going to be. My line has always been, hey, we're not perfect. Nobody is. But I'd like to think if we make mistakes along the way while we're going through these growing pains, we try really hard not to make them again. And I think we keep that communication rolling through and everybody in the company buys into it. That's how you do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the challenge there, Ken, and you said it a few times, was culture.
Right.
When you start, how do you, you start giving people personality tests? How do you make sure that as you're bringing people on, they actually do see the world the way that you see it in order to have that culture, right? Because, especially with you and your company in this example, you bring in 300-400 people in one shot. That's not exactly, you know what I'm saying? That's that's a lot of personalities.
Right.
Imagine a small company would bring in 3 or 4 people in over a course of a period of time. I mean, again, you can put a job out now, Ken, and get 1,000 applicants in a couple of weeks.
Right.
How do you figure out whether they do actually believe what your culture fit is?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's no silver bullet, my favorite line, but there is no silver bullet to any of this. Talk to your peers, throw it out there. For me, if it were me still doing it, I mean, I had a pretty good gut for these types of things. And I know people don't want to go by your gut, especially nowadays. There's so much more help. But, I would ask questions that might be a little uncomfortable. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean, I'll ask questions that are set to how we work and set expectations properly. I never, for instance, when I was running my MSP, we would bring engineers in, and I would bring them in, and the first thing they want to do is show me all their certifications. And I would just roll back a second and say, just going to let you know, this isn't Disney World here. This isn't going to be the funnest thing you ever did. You can make it that way, but I'm going to tell you there's work. This is the type of job that you work your butt off. And there's a lot of rewards for working your butt off, but I just don't want to set the expectations that you're going to come in here and it's all sunshiny and you're floating on a cloud, and then you get in here and lightning hits you the first minute you're in the door. That's not a way of making sure they understand that, because MSP life is hard. There's a lot of work to be done, especially when you're smaller and you're going to expect people to do more than maybe just their job function, because everybody has to wear multiple hats until you get things rolling. So in that area, what I would do is just be open and honest, let them know a day in the life, talk to them about it, but then also say, here's the reward. This is where we're driving to. This is our goal, where we want to be. But we can't get to that goal without good people like you understanding these pieces.
Yeah, I mean, so it's an art more than a science, it sounds like.
Right.
But I mean, culture's got to roll from the top down. And, bottom line is there's a lot of people who believe just about everything the opposite of probably the person that's at the top. So just, I guess, be very selective is ultimately the bottom line answer without too much science behind it. Keith comes back, says, fact that Rex Frank was absorbed by PAX8, still could maintain his mission, and talks so highly about PAX8. He's like, so often you see these purchases changes the company that was acquired. Not in that case. Yeah, that was Keith. Thanks for that note, Keith. Obviously, as we've all heard the workshops and heard the peer groups and heard all these people who, hey, the way the compensation model of a deal works is based on whether you stick around as the person, as the owner, founder, decision maker, or if you don't, right? So, the answer is if you're the seller, you have the ability to set conditions. If you're the buyer, you have there's a back and forth that occurs. Nobody just, it's not like a Happy Meal. I go to the drive-through and I know I'm picking option one and the price is this and that's it. It's
Right.
not that simple. So, a lot goes into it. There's entire companies like Reed Warren's a great resource, and we'll have him on in a little while from IT Valuations, right? Where he comes in and he'll tell you just about every style of story about ones that have gone smooth, ones that have gone horribly, ones that were in between, ones where, it was just dragged out for double the amount of time. There you go. Reed Warren will be joining on Thursday. I didn't even know that. So come back on Thursday. That's right. Not today, not tomorrow, Thursday. And you're going to be able to hear from a guy who literally is in the room when the buyer and the seller side get together and try and figure out how it works. And there is no blueprint, right? Every time somebody starts from a blueprint, it never ends in, where, never gets closed. It's always unique. So everybody comes in with their game plan, but then everything else happens. So definitely listen to that and understand what's out there. But a lot of the time, Ken, I heard a story from our friend Alec, who's like, yeah, I ran into a guy and, his exit plan is he's going to dissolve his company and shut it down when he's done. And he's like, that's old school. And I'm like, okay. He's like, there's value there. Why shouldn't he sell his company and make something on the way out the door? And it's like, you're right. I just don't think people understand what's involved with that type of situation. And by at least understanding that, you can see if that's the path for you.
Interesting.
Could you listen, how these people come in, right? They want to see agreements. They want, even if they're month to month, right? They want to see a contract in place. They want to see trailing revenue. They want to see that the business is growing and that
Sure.
it's not.
But it's not always, if you're opposed to that and you're trying to get out, you could still just sell your customer base list, sell your customer base and still talk to your partners and talk to someone, because there's MSPs out there that would love the idea of just swooping in and taking over a customer base.
Sure.
You could line up with them. I just did it. I just set one up a couple of weeks ago where I connected the two MSPs and went through the whole process, gave advice and just said, what I thought about both sides. And they did it. He moved his customer base over. He went on to do something else, and the MSP that bought the customer base was happy because he added a new line of business.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of ways to go there, right? And
Yeah,
just like some friends we have in Florida who say, I didn't even get a realtor, right? I sold my house private because you can't put it on the street and let it stay long enough, right? For the
right.
realtor to do anything. Sometimes you don't even really need a lot of people in between, but I would say more often than not, somebody else needs to be in the mix.
Yes.
Very seldom is it that clean, Ken.
Oh yeah, no. I'm just saying, for someone to just say, I don't want to get involved in all that, I'm just going to shut it down. You kind of throwing away a bunch of business.
Yeah, I agree. So, interesting times. That being said, there was actually an event down in Florida. I don't know if anybody was able to hit it up, right? A couple of cybersecurity events like Zero Trust World. It was called Right of Boom. I don't know if I think somebody from PAX8 was there. Oh, that's right. Matt Lee was there.
Yep.
Mr. Matt Lee himself. So, I mean, obviously the theme of that conference, obviously tilted to security, was, hey, the people that are staying up with it are going to succeed, and the people that don't are going to be left behind. How many times have we heard this?
Yeah. And I heard so many good things about that event, that it was just, the actual security folks. There was no sales involved. They just kind of went right at it, and they did a great job and more than just Matt Lee. I heard a lot of folks in the industry say how great Right of Boom was. So great job on that one, putting something together like that, and squeezed in between some of these other events. Sometimes it's not as easy, but it sounded like the content was just spot on and people learned a lot.
So hopefully that's exactly what people say walking out of Zero Trust World. But at the end of the day, how many times did we hear it when cloud came out, Ken, which is still, you believe it or not, every time I look at, one of the little, surveys, still more than 50% of the people, the majority of the stuff's not cloud. And back in the early 2000s, when hosted and then cloud, right? Marketing terms. And they said the same thing, right? Hey, you're going to be left behind. Well, it's 2022, Ken. Are they really behind?
Well, I mean, maybe they got left behind on some things. If you're not doing cloud and security and involved in this part, you're missing out on a big chunk of what's happening, right? It's definitely there. Sure, some people don't want the liability and they're going to stay. And to your point though, George, I hate to say you're done. You're completely done if you don't follow this. It's not that. You could probably keep the same type of life if you're just doing this as, you're making a decent amount of money, you're not running around like a crazy person. Even the break fix stuff is always going to be there. Someone's always going to want something that breaks to be fixed. But where the money is going to be is these types of, the cloud services and the security. And that's what I think the underlying message really is, hey, we're just trying to tell you, don't miss out on this stuff, because if you really want to get into being an MSP, right, and moving to that type of setup, you need to be in the cloud and security business.
Keith Nelson, I swear he says it all the time. He's like, so you're saying this is supposed to be a for-profit venture? Yes, it should.
Yeah, you should probably be making money. And I know Mr. Keith Nelson definitely is.
Well, he has to cover all those cigars.
And his his cars, that not just the cars for the salespeople, but the cars for the big guys like him.
Yeah, of course, 100%. Pete says it's all about being consultative. It's all about the consultative partnership, no longer about product software behind the partner. Well, there's as much as everybody tries to standardize, right, on their stack, and they should, the products change.
Well, yeah, especially SOC SIEM and the stuff that we're talking about now. I think it was Matt Lee, and maybe Matt Lee coined this from someone else, but that was the one area where Matt was like, you got to pick something now and get behind it and work it. But the SOC and the SIEM and these things that you're using now may not be the one you're using in 6 months.
Wow.
Because of the changes.
Talking about switching vendors.
Right. Well, not even vendors, just because even the vendors are changing, right? They're making changes and switching things around and moving into bigger areas of security. So you just never know what it's going to be. But the bigger problem is the companies that are saying, oh, I'm waiting for it to really lock down and get the right one. No, you need to start protecting your clients now and yourself.
Yeah. So think like, just like, so this whole conversation, we said, hey, transparency, Microsoft, passing things down, this, that, and the other. Yeah. I mean, this is a thing, right? Like, you need to start somewhere, and then you need to maintain and understand what's coming. And it's about education in the end, it sounds like, right? Like,
It's always about
you
education.
need to make business decisions based on information. How do you get the information? You got to stay up on what's happening. And as we know, in technology world, changes quickly.
Right. It's always about education. That's a key statement, George. Everything should be about education, including your sales and marketing.
So Keith says you need to have a good base in technology and business, especially workflows and processes. Yep. That will never change, Keith. And I believe that's an area where a lot of people struggle, even now, because they just don't know what they don't know, right?
One thing that, I'm sorry, George. One thing that came up though, Keith had brought up a few good points here, is when he talks about someone like Rex Frank and his team. When you're getting to a certain size and starting to look and struggle with these business pieces of your business, the operations, the process and procedure, that's the time to start looking at coaching and really understand that the cost of a coach is going to pay for itself 3 to 5x. That's what I've seen so far from the people that have done it. I wish I had a coach like that back in the day. My coach was going to all the MSPs and basically, feeding off what all the knowledge that the MSPs had, but you're not getting that direct coach who's going to kick you in the pants and push you in the right direction. And so I think coaching is a big thing, or peer groups. Peer groups are your starting point. And then if you really want to take the business to a next level and have direct focus, someone directly focus on your business, coaching steps in.
Yeah. So 2 ways to learn, right? You do it on your own, the hard way, or you learn from other people, right? And other resources. So maybe a little bit of both, but definitely, don't have to go on it all on your own. And then Pete came back and said, many of our partners moved several partnerships a few times over the last 3-year period, which was once every 5 to 10 years. Like, listen, you're right. The onus, like, there's some people who are never going to go away, right? Microsoft's a great example, right? Big machine, right? What's the alternative? Handful, maybe, not even. But at the end of the day, it's on everyone to stay current, right? I mean, the vendors have to take feedback and continue to build out their solutions to meet the needs of the people, basically all the way downstream, right? It's not just you, it's your end customer. But in the same token, there's changes you need to make as the person in between that conversation too. Like, it can be unsuccessful on on either side, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So, and a lot of it, I believe, Ken, a lot of the vendors are now going to come out with unmanaged versus managed, right? Where the MSP can say, I don't have time. Can you, is there another price bracket where you can do it for me? Yeah,
and you're seeing that a lot. The SOC space already does that, already has those options. Yeah, some of the SOC providers, that's what they're doing. And of course, as MSPs, you really don't, honestly, I don't think you should take that on anyways. I think as an MSP, you need to have that help because you're really not going to be watching that stuff 24/7. Oh, yeah, a little drop. But seriously, we really need to make sure that we're aligning these, that as MSPs, we're lining up with the right vendors that can take that stuff on and not try to take that stuff on, especially if you're not ready for it. A lot of the SOC companies are ready for that. Yeah. Hey, the great unbundling of services, Pete says.
The great unbundling. Okay. Well, we have a few minutes left. Let's have him come in and explain what the great unbundling of services is. Go ahead, Pete. Tell us what that is, pal. Unmute.
So you have your core MSP services, and then you have your security services. And at the original thought was, I'll just be an MSSP and I'll fold my MSP services underneath, right? And now what you're seeing is two very separate practices within an organization. They're separating their security people into a separate group and their MSP into a separate group. And instead of bundling, they're doing it. And Microsoft is even proving either further, right? We were saying, hey, bundle in, add value to your stack, add these things that people are using commonly. And people are really reevaluating whether they want that in the core stack or if that's an add-on to it. So where for years we were saying nothing in marketing and sales of bundle adds value, bundle adds contract, bundle adds stickiness, right? Not true, right? It
Well,
gets
I
it
wouldn't,
gets
I wouldn't say
stickier
it's,
now
yeah,
with
I
these
wouldn't say
different
it's not
services.
true. I agree with what you're saying. It's less true now, but I wouldn't say it's not true because like I said earlier, you could still bundle and build in cushion to take care of you when things like that happen and still build in, have the upfront contracts to state, hey, the security pieces of this can change at any time due to the marketplace, which everybody knows.
Maybe rephrase it. Maybe rephrase it
Right.
from risk mitigation of a department, or even some of them have started secondary companies for their security services. And
This
they
is
move
all-
people between their organizations on how they pay them for their time. But they're moving the security services to reduce the risk out of their core business.
Or they're hiring MSSPs.
True.
Yeah. I mean,
So there's some
that-
interesting strategies.
Yeah.
it's almost like the software approach, right? Like there's modules available, right? Like here's the total, here's all of the things you can buy off the menu, right? And if you want this or this or this or this, you can add on, right, to your offering. I mean, that's kind of not unbundling, Pete. It's changing the pod of offerings so that they're more delineated.
I've definitely seen the peeling back of Microsoft because of this whole new thing. Just pulling Microsoft out and just saying, look, that's a direct thing. They know about it. They know who it is. If the price goes up, they see it live. We're going to keep that separate. The other things, I've seen them still keeping bundled in their stack because once you strip it out, you're going to allow clients to just buy the basics and not have any security.
Well, it also lets them though sell to somebody that doesn't have security. Or an MSP that really doesn't have security and gives them the ability to add their stack in and then erode their other partner that's in there. So there's two schools of thought, right? You can buy everything from me, or if you don't have everything, security should be a separate party than that's doing your infrastructure, right? So somebody's got an audit and an eye on security, and somebody's got going back to the old acceptable accounting practices, right? If you're an accountant and you touch the accounting system, you can't work on the accounting system, right? If you touch when an auditor comes in, an IT auditor comes in from the big ones, part of the provisions is whoever audits it can't do the work to remediate.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So if I audit you, I can't remediate, but if I break it apart or it's a separate company, then I have the ability to still gobble up that work in different ways because of the firewall that I put between departments or companies.
It's interesting, imagine before MSPs are like, hey, we don't want to be, we don't want to have to worry about other people and access and now, and having to step over other people and this person doing this work and now what you're saying, Pete, is it is going that way more as a expected situation than not.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen more in the last year of traditional MSPs and cloud service providers start a new company of security. So they have that firewall and they can move between companies. And, even though they rep it through a sales rep or a partnership between the two companies, they're apart, but they're still grabbing that same mind share from the ownership perspective.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, it's an interesting dynamic, but it's shifting. And we talked about this way at the beginning, Ken. You went from consultant to MSP, marketing term. We've heard that from Keith many times. To now, do we go back to consultant?
It's all in a name. What's in a name, George?
It's the model of business.
Yeah, no, I get it, but you know as well as I do that MSP covers way too broad a range of
Yeah,
this industry.
yeah.
Perspective and perception.
Yep.
Well, I
And
think,
then a vendor owns the hashtag, right?
yeah. Well, I do think that, you know, like marketing, very big term. What do you mean exactly? Technology, very big term. What do you mean? Engineering, right? Like you can take these very, very large industries and have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different sub industries underneath of the parent, big name, right? So IT or technology is a very, 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 could be broken out probably into 15 or 20 categories at this point, of which the stuff that MSPs do could be like part of one.
Right.
So yeah, I think the problem is, Ken, is that the assumption is that they are doing all of those things, and then it becomes a risk problem.
Right.
If you're too busy doing all of those things, can you be good at any one thing?
Sure. I get that too.
So interesting times in MSP land. So, hey, we're not going to have Ken on Thursday. He's out in Denver. He has a shovel he packed into his bag, apparently.
Yep.
So we're gonna have Reed Warren from MSP Evaluation. IT Evaluations, but definitely an interesting guy. Has tons of crazy stories. We're gonna try and pull a couple out of him. No script, just candid. But where could we potentially see Ken next week?
Threat Locker.
Yeah, Zero
Be
Trust
there.
World, the
And
MSP
then,
Block Party.
and the week after that, I'll be in Dallas at Exchange.
So if you're looking for some hangout time with Kenny P and company, that could be you. I know it's going to definitely be Keith and definitely Darren and maybe Pete too.
I'll be there.
We're looking forward to seeing people in person again. Very, wasn't that long ago. It was Orlando in November, and now we are Orlando in February. So see you guys. We're going to actually be live, right? So while we're in Orlando, we'll definitely still keep our 1:00 Eastern time, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Other than that, guys, appreciate you guys for jumping on. Ken, see you soon. And everybody else, catch you on the next one. Have a good one, guys.